Well, thank you for having us. Let me introduce you, Mark Cosaglow. Mark, how are you doing today?
What up? Chilling, brother. Couldn't wait to do this. It's the highlight of my week. And if your webinar is the highlight of your week, you're in trouble, I guess. I don't know.
That's what I was just about to say. This is going to this is fun. And so we're here to talk about today about CS. Mark, tell me who you are, where you're from. For those of you, everybody knows you, but just for those who are coming from my side of the world, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, great to meet everybody. My name is Mark Cosaglow. I'm the CRO at Catalyst Software. I've been in tech sales for about 10 years. That's when I met Jocko for the first time where were we at Menlo Park, I think, and some weird thing. And I met this guy that had this like 3 feet tall and 30-foot long scroll that he literally pasted up around the room. And I was like, this is my type of dude. It had the nth degree of detail on how go-to-market should be run. And I think he based a lot of stuff off of that initial sacred scroll, Jocko. I think I actually I do still have it in my office. It's one of my prized possessions. But yeah, riding shotgun with Jocko today to talk about customer success stuff.
Great. And for those of you who already know me, I'm Jocko van der Kooi, founder of Winning by Design. Started this company in about 2012 after I believed the way we treated our customers was not reflective of how the customers wanted to be treated. And, you know, like the whole idea of elephant hunting and holding people over a barrel, all that war terminology that we used in those days just became absolutely foreign to me. You know, like I am an advent supporter of saving the elephant. So that whole idea of elephant hunting was the wrong terminology. I believe in customer success. I believe in making customers happy. And when you do that and you get them successful, then everything else will follow. That's the reason why Mark and I aligned so much over the past years and worked for different companies. And I work with many different firms. What we here are to bring to you today is a conversation on where customer success is going, where we are seeing, and the importance of it. Mark, do you want me to take it off? Do you want me to kick it off, or do you want to take it off?
Listen, I think I'll kick it off just real quickly by saying I think that there's a seminal moment right now for post-sales revenue teams to completely dominate the executive discussion. I don't know of many boards or C-level executives that aren't pounding their CS teams to increase retention, to figure out expansion. And the ball is being handed over, and I'm really excited about what I think that we can do as a profession for post-sales teams, and also like the advancements that we can make. I mean, you know, I was the first employee at Outreach. I was their head of sales and grew it to $250 million in 8 years. And I got the benefit from the top of funnel craziness of let's just keep throwing money top of funnel. And eventually when the new economic circumstances hit, you know, all of a sudden the back half, that post sales, that second part of the bow tie that Jocko talks about became so much more important. And all of a sudden everybody realized it was anemic with investment, anemic with people. They just riffed half the team and now they're asking them to do more. And I think it's a chance for us to step up and do some awesome things to advocate for the profession of post-sales revenue teams.
With that said, well said, Mark. It is happening. Customer success is going to be extremely important over the next couple of weeks, months, and I believe that we are at a watershed moment where things are changing. So what I'm going to take you through is about like 3-4 minutes of bringing us down to the absolute fundamentals of growth and where we're coming from. Once we understand the fundamentals, we can do whatever we want with it. If you choose that, you say, it's like, you know what, I don't want to do it that way, that's fine. I'm just giving you a heads up on where growth comes from. You see these things down here, this sawtooth? This is before there was recurring revenue. This is how I ran business. And in these numbers, you see a year 1, let's say I do 10 million. Year 2, let's say I do 20 million. Year 3, let's say I do 30 million. When you grow that, you start every year over at 0. Okay? Every year you started at 0. So when recurring revenue came in, we thought to ourselves this would change. And why? Now notice what happens, right? Notice what happens. Down here, I need to grow from year 1 to year 2. If I want to double revenue, I need to acquire twice as much revenue. Not 100%, there's no upgrade and support, but for later date, okay? Not too in the weeds right now. If I want to grow from 10 to 20, then in year 2, I got to win $20 million. In recurring revenue, if I want to grow from 10 to 20, in year 2, I can do exactly the same with exactly the same team and accomplish $20 million as long as my retention is 100%, right? This seems as basic as can be, right? Like basic. Okay. In year 3, with the same team, I'm now growing to 30 million. fundamentally, this is how recurring revenue is supposed to work, right? Now, if I now start growing exponentially fast, in other words, I go like, hey, let's hype up the sales team, let's bring out a bunch of hunters and whatnot, right? Then I'm going to grow, and now I'm growing in year 1, 10 million. In year 2, the same way as I did in perpetual sales, I am now growing my subscription revenue nicely by another 10 million. So I'm growing like 20 to 30, right? So this machine works right now. Renewal comes in. What you see, squint. What do you see? An exponential growth curve. Okay, still. Next step. I'm going even further, and I'm going like, okay, well, if I can retain it, I probably also can expand it. Goes up even steeper. Voila. French for there you have it. The growth curve occurs. Okay, this growth. This is what fundamentally drove over the past decade. This is what drove revenue growth in as fundamental as this is. And what we focused on primarily was on the blue. And we assumed that the other two parts were ongoing. What I'm going to depict to you is a little bit of a different perspective. Okay, same data, but this is realistic. This is a realistic point of view. Now look what I'm doing. 2013, I'm booking close to $1 million in acquisition, total $1 million, carry over to year 2014, year 2. I retained most of that. I lost a little bit of it. I add a little bit of it. I had some acquisition on top of that, and 2.8, right? I keep doing this. Boom, line up that line, fill it all out in, and here you see a typical growth curve of what we see out there, right? This is typical what we see. We accumulated this data by like from AWS, if I bring that in, and there you have the complete growth picture, okay? And as this picture becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and as I'm trying to depict down here, you'll see on the right here, triple, double, right? Like not exactly, but close to it, triple. This is the growth path that from, like mid 2015-ish, this was really where growth came from. Triple, double. Today it's, like some people say it's T3, D3, I get it. But this is it, this model. Now I'm going to show you what to pay attention to, what we have lost, okay? We focused on that part. Why? You'll see that $1.87 million that came into acquisition. Suddenly that next year they hired a sales team. Actually, they hired that year and the team came online in the next year. And that suddenly turned into that $5.8 million. Growth! Founder goes like, fantastic. I got every growth I wanted. This could be on a new founding business. It could be a business unit. This could be a go-to-market function, whatever this is. You'll see this pattern. What I see now is that pattern starts to carry over to retention, right? Still fantastic. Still feel very basic. Okay, that's still the point, basic. Now what you're going to start to see that growth starts to come in here from retention. Eventually, growth from expansion start to play a meaningful role. Okay, so now I call this 3 growth centers, not 1, 3: acquisition, retention, and expansion. Now here comes the kicker. When I chart these things out, there are 3 different kind of curves. You see that growth curve is in the beginning, that blue acquisition growth curve, that follows at the beginning a nice growth curve. And then it falters a little bit. We all know that many companies are in that mode right now, that sales is just hampering a little bit. But look how beautiful that pink line stays. Now that pink line follows an exponential growth curve. That pink line stays growing and growing and growing. Fundamentally, the misunderstanding that the world of subscription revenue has, that its hyper growth, exponential growth pattern is not coming from acquisition, nor is it coming from expansion. It is primarily driven by retention. An exponential growth curve like that means disproportionate impact. Small changes, huge impact. You'll see if I move from 2016 to 17, that has this delta, but if I move from 2020 to 21, it has this delta on the vertical axis. This delta on the horizontal axis per year, always the same. This delta on the vertical axis becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Fundamentally, hypergrowth comes from retention-driven growth. That is a misunderstanding that has facilitated itself. And I'll give you a practical example. I always use this, and Mark, perhaps it's a great place to start. When we consult with a company and we look at their deck, right? Give us your monthly deck, right? Let's say it's 50 pages of decks, 50 slides in the deck. 48 of the slides have to do with acquisition, lead generation, compensation, people on targets, average discount giving, ACV, like first 48 slides of the deck that the executive team goes through every month is all about acquisition, acquisition, acquisition. Towards the end, like a handful of slides as it relates to customer success, NPS score, churn metrics, and so on. And that is how they're running the business. Everybody's tired at the end of the meeting, after a 60 to 90-minute meeting. They come to those slides, it's like, yeah, move on. This is reality every day in and out for many of us, right? That is the problem. We have fundamentally, what I'm proving to you here, growth is completely driven by the customer success team. This is, this is a fundamental machinery, mathematically proven, yet practically the customers are unable to adjust their business to that. Mark, dude, am I alone on this, or am I the only one seeing this?
I may or may not have been in a majority of board meetings where this phrase, sales has gone a little long. So CS, I think you only have 5 minutes left to do your slides, and they motor through their deck. So listen, I think it's a disease. I think the disease started in the perpetual license revenue model, where the winning of the deal, which is all that you could do, was so celebrated and so important. And that carried through into a lot of modern day revenue leaders that grew up in that model. And so they continue to celebrate what they know. And what they know is awesome is a new logo win. And they don't understand the importance of celebrating the retained customer win. I mean, at Outreach, we would have a boom email that would go out for a new logo. There was no equivalent of that for when we do our biggest retention of a multi-million-dollar customer. We'd boom a $12,000 new logo and not say anything about the $12 million renewal. And so I think that legacy thinking has really invaded modern revenue leaders. That's where they grew up. That's what they know. People always retreat to what they're comfortable to. And so I think that back in the last 7 years or so of grow at all costs, it was easy to keep pumping money top of funnel and shortchanging and ignoring what was happening on the second half of the bow tie. And now we're in a state of panic, if you ask me, where a lot of boards are saying, I don't understand. Why don't we have retention? Our product's so awesome. Well, maybe your product isn't that awesome. You just had a great sales team that was good at getting deals in. And you've forgotten about the real core part, which is driving impact for your customers. You are driving impact for your prospects. Do you know how many times I went to a product meeting to get on the roadmap and I was able to get what I wanted as a pre-sales leader, but my post-sales leader wasn't able to get what they needed in order to retain customers? I bet I won 90% of the time. And so like this mindset has to change. And it starts a lot of times with somebody talking and educating these old school sales leaders that are thinking with a perpetual license. They're playing a SaaS game with a perpetual license rule book. And you have to change the rules or you're going to lose the current game we're in, which is all about retaining and expanding your current customers.
Now, you mentioned the bow tie a couple of times, right? Perhaps I should, because I don't think everybody's 100% familiar with it. So perhaps I should just touch briefly upon it. What do you think?
I think so. Yeah, 100%. I think it's foundational to thinking.
Okay. What you see here on the left is the funnel, the usual funnel tipped on its side. That funnel has lead generation, lead development, and sales. Okay. That is the left side of the bow tie, customer acquisition. What I just spoke about is that we also have the motion on the expansion part and the retention part. That is represented at the right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the two of them with what I call a commit. Not a close, not a win, nothing like that. A commit, and if I want to go further, I'm going to call it a mutual commit. Two parties, the buyer and the seller, get together and they mutually commit. And it is a true commitment. If you ask many providers, we're talking about a multi-year commitment. In order for a successful customer to be successful financially, for the seller, they often need to be in the range of 3+ years, like from that same customer, sometimes 5, 6, 7 years. That is truly a mutual commitment. Today, we have a detailed description on the lead gen and programs and so on. We do not have a detailed description on the phases and stages that takes place on what we call on the right side of the bow tie. That bow tie has a little arrow there that twists around, right? When I showed you that hyperbolic curve a second ago, that is where those arrows come. They are generated right there. That is creating a system that we want. What I'm going to say, the goal of, in order to get that growth, You need to achieve recurring revenue. Recurring revenue gets you there. If your customer comes back, renews, and expands, recurring revenue. What the fundamental principle is, the fundamental principles of what an entire recurring revenue operation is based on, is that the result, recurring revenue, is a result, not a goal. We, for the longest time as organizations, have focused recurring revenue is the goal. No. Recurring revenue is what comes out of the box. It's not what's in the box, not what you put into the box. It's what comes out of the machine. What makes recurring revenue is recurring impact. First principle of recurring revenue is the result of recurring impact. If you do not deliver recurring impact, you will not get recurring revenue. Go think about your Netflix, Disney subscriptions, whatever, like subscriptions you're currently unsubscribing of. If you're unsubscribing of a subscription, you do that because the impact that you get from it no longer warrants the investment you're making. The recurring impact ain't there, and therefore you're taking away their recurring revenue. Recurring impact is the goal. If we achieve recurring impact, then we get recurring revenue, we get expansion, retention, everything will flow out of that. All based on deliver the customer recurring impact. Mark, that's kind of like where the word impact came in from as well. And I noticed that you have used some of your thinking about here over the past years.
Yeah, so I've completely instrumented Catalyst with this thing. If you look at that bow tie slide, you're going to see 6 or 7 distinct areas. And each of those areas represents where something magic happens in the customer journey. If you're in that lead dev area, that's where your SDRs usually live. They receive the output of lead gen, which would be an MQL or ICP accounts from RevOps as their book of business. And then they output something to sales, qualified pipeline, right? And what you can do is when you organize your go-to-market motion this way, you can create roles that own that area. And when they own an area, you can measure what is their conversion of inputs to outputs, and then how long does it take it to do it? You have multiple levers in order to optimize. And then the back half is just where it's completely barren. There's just so little instrumentation, very little tooling. There's lots, it's very difficult to find best practices. I can find today on LinkedIn no less than 100 posts on how to start a cold call. I bet you I can find less than 2 posts on how to navigate a difficult retention conversation with someone. And so like that's where I'm starting to see like the market and what's needed in the market are not aligned right now. And I think that that's where impact can come in. If you look at this, what I think is the genius of this model, impact is at every place. You know, you have to identify it. You have to like, your marketers need to take the impact that your onboarders can deliver in 30 to 45 days, and they need to market with that. Your SDRs need to make a promise and book a meeting around that. Your AEs need to show how it can deliver on the promise and that impact. And then your onboarders have to deliver on the promise and say, listen, we actually can do what we said we were going to do. And now we can go back and ask for more areas where we can have impact. And when you ask for more areas for impact, that's a way to ask for more money. And so here's something that I've been showing people a lot recently is this is a really interesting model. So if I take an axis and I have value and time like this, what I'm seeing most companies do is they start out, they sign the deal, they do implementation. There's obviously no value that you gain during implementation. And then all of a sudden, they roll out this huge solution. There's some adoption. There's some additional value that's created. Actually, I have my axes wrong. Jocko's going to kill me, Mr. Graphics. And then that value kind of plateaus over time, right? And so when the value plateaus, we end up with like a renewal event that happens out here at month 12. And we haven't done very much additional value since month 4 when we implemented. And so the customer comes back and says, what have you done for me lately? And listen, we're all humans. We're all trying to answer the question, what have you done for me lately, all the time. And you can't say you've done anything lately because you're so exhausted after this huge implementation project that you just kind of left them on their own after that. And Jocko and I have talked a lot about like, you've given them the work to get value out of their product. You can't give the prospect work to get value out of their product. That doesn't make sense. You have
Mark,
to make it easy.
Maybe,
yeah, go ahead, Jocko.
Maybe in month 9 or 10, they hired a new person. That person couldn't find their password. And so all they recall if there was a bad password support experience, right? You go like, okay, that, like there's so many like day in day out activities that if you do not help create that value, that automatically create your questionings to the customer whether you are actually there to help them.
That's exactly right. And I think what we're trying to say with impact is, rather than spending 2 or 3 or 4 months doing it, why don't you start a little bit shorter? Why don't you say, listen, we're going to do a little bit less, and we're going to stair step it like this, so that there's times of implementation and times of adoption. And so that this becomes these areas of recurring impact. This is where you just add a little bit more. And so at Catalyst, what we have decided is we've created solutions. A solution is literally a series of features and functionality that solve a job that needs to be done by someone. And we've created little experiences inside those solutions. So we can deliver one solution, and then we can give you multiple moments of impact. So the customer's always seeing this. And then what we do is every time we launch a new solution, we come in and we ask for expansion dollars. So we build in several things. One, we build in, there's no need for QBR anymore because we're constantly doing value. So they're constantly meeting with us. Every time we get to an area where we need to do a solution or moment of impact, we double check. Are we aligned to the business initiatives that you care about? Or do you have a slide in your board meeting about this right now? If you don't, then why are we doing it? And the major mistake that happens in implementation is you immediately get delegated to below the power line or BTL people. Their priorities are fundamentally different than the people that buy the software. And so when you get trapped down there, you end up implementing stuff that they care about, not the stuff the executives care about. And there becomes a huge misalignment in solutioning and the value and outcomes they're trying to create. And so this helps you get that, hey, we're going to come back in. We do it all the time. We meet every 30 to 90 days with somebody. In that time period, we show them what we've done. We ask them if what we're going to do next aligns to their business initiatives. We give them a menu of things to pick from, and then we do it again, and we do it again, and we do it again. And we have a human-based way to do that, and we have a tech touch-based way to do that, so that we can guide our customers through the system all the way through all of our segments. We have a component of that. So tech touch is a strategy. It's not a segment strategy. And so this is how I think that companies these days that are really starting to align to this idea that recurring impact is the driver of recurring revenue are starting to architect their post-sales processes in order to make sure that fundamentally they understand and have a process that drives that recurring impact. And it's not just something that they're hoping their CSMs figure out.
Okay. Let me pick it, let me throw some fuel on the fire there, because that's what I do. I throw fuel on the fire. What Mark spoke about is that there are a few of these moments, we call them moments that matter. There's many ways to describe them, but these are the unique moments. Where do you start? You just listen to Mark, you go like, where do I start? I like it. I want to do something like this. So what you'll see here on the left side of the bowtie, blue is sales, pink is expansion and retention and renewal. And so what you'll see are the blue moments. The blue moments, for example, this is a fantastic landing on the website, that first moment, right? That second blue one, that is the second part of the stage. This is like what Mark spoke about, what he did at Outreach, a great discovery call or something like that. And the third blue ice cream there, that is a popsicle moment that we refer to as like, oh, a fantastic proposal, well listened, customized, felt like they received me. All these moments, there's a lot of people working on that. But now we go to the pink moments to the right. So I'm going now to the other side. What I'm going to say is like, look, on onboarding, here are a few moments that you can consider that really make a difference. The way that a customer gets handoff from one person to another person. I explained to you this example. I went to this restaurant, okay? And this particular restaurant, we did not make reservations. It was on a Friday night. Shame on us. I get this. Shame on us. We did not make reservations in some smaller city. We walk into the restaurant. The person who was the lady who's trying to see it looks us up and says like, "Oh, you made no reservations." I'm like, "No, we didn't make reservations." But could you see that the restaurant is empty, mind you, empty? Okay. And she goes back and she goes behind the bar, talks to the owner of the place, probably, and they're whispering. And I tell you, there's nothing wrong with us. Maureen and I look dashing. My wife looks dashing. I look the way I always look. But she looks dashing. But she comes back and says, "No, we can't seat you." Okay. like, and I don't know about if this happened to you, but I feel rejected. I feel like I've been discriminated for my bald head, whatever, pick something, right? It doesn't feel right. I go to the next restaurant, an even better restaurant. And it's down Los Altos, for those of you who are familiar with the Silicon Valley. And it's called Flower. And I'm walking up, and there's the dude that is parking the cars, the valet person. And he is already looking at, smiling at us. And he says, welcome, how are you doing? How is your night going, right? And I go, like, it's fantastic. And he says, are you looking for dinner? And I go like, yeah, I'm looking for dinner. And he says, let me go check with the bartender, right? And he comes back in and he says, I just spoken to the bartender. We have 2 seats at the bar. He walks us in and he hands us off to the bartender. That is a handoff. You feel welcome. You feel like there's communication between the team. That is what I mean with handoff. Kickoff. A proper kickoff. Not a kickoff to get you to know how to use the product. A kickoff how to get you to first impact. What happens when you join that first impact? That you have a joint impact plan. If you look at adoption, are you helping them drive impact? Do you have a review of them on impact? Are you having forum of trigger plays? And trigger plays could mean, hey, there's an impact that the customer is currently not seeing that we should help with, and so on and so forth. All these things. But these are the moments that matter. Pick one of, it doesn't matter too much which one you pick. You don't have to pick all of them at the same time. Pick 1, 2, or at most 3. Focus on those moments. Help the customer achieve impact. I can tell you, one of the most important plays that we see frequently go wrong is that, now I'll give you a screenshot of all the plays that we nowadays run at Winning by Design. I give you the one that goes wrong, the most common, is that people are not informing the customer when they've achieved impact. They assume that the customer will figure this out. The customer doesn't figure this out. They don't know it. They only know when the password went wrong and you didn't show up to help them with the password. That's what they remember. But they don't remember when you saw something going almost off the rails, you called them up and you fixed it. You got to let them know that. Right? And you got to let them know, hey, you're missing out on this more impact. Do you want that? Or yeah, it's fine. You don't have to, but there's an expansion opportunity. Not for me, the revenue. The expansion opportunity is for you with the impact. That mindset, that idea, what you see down here, some of these plays, that is what we call an impact-driven mindset. And you see the word impact is driven in each of these plays. Deliver impact, achieve impact, deliver impact, notify of impact, identify new impact, right? All that is that's what the customer wants. And I tell you what your analogy is, okay? How many of you are not reliant on a really good friend that tells you what TV episode should I follow tonight? Because I am unwilling to go through the journey of the multiple TV programs, Netflix, Amazon, Apple TV, to figure out, can somebody just tell me on a Friday night, go dive this series for this weekend. This is good. And once I have a friend that gives me that good series, that impact, I go back to that friend. Dan, I got another one. What are you watching right now, right? And, like, I'm late to the game, but we're watching Yellowstone right now, my son and I, and we're loving it, right? So, and nobody in this case told me that. I figured my son brought that series to me. Obviously, it's obvious. But the point is that impact of a TV series and knowing that somebody can tell you in advance that is going to get you there is a lot better than you surfing and trying to find out what is good. Mark.
Jocko, let me give you a real world example of this. So if you look at that first impact under onboarding, you're going to see handoff. I did like an informal poll my first 50 days here at Catalyst. I talked to 100 of our customers, and I would say handoff was in the top 3 things that people think that they stink at, and on almost every 100 conversations I have. It's just really hard. But when you have this operating model to organize yourself around, what we did is here at Catalyst we pulled the handoff process into the sales cycle. And so in order for the onboarder to deliver what we call our 4 core solutions in the first 30 days, we need to start getting information in the sales cycle to prep that up. So we have a worksheet that's required by our AEs to be filled out prior to close. Once we feel really good about the deal, we then have a meeting with the onboarder to introduce them to the customer and show them how they're going to use this data to deliver these 4 core solutions. And then the handoff has just happened. It's before the contract's even signed, that the customer already knows the implementation manager they're going to use. They already done how the work of the worksheet that they put together is going to use to help them deliver value fast. And then I would say, like, to me, what I'm seeing is you see number 404, first impact. This is the one where I think that we have a chance to change culture. Again, most revenue cultures are based around celebrating the win, the signing of the contract. I can't think of a more self-serving, navel-gazing celebration that there is like, we signed it, pop the corks, write the commission checks. There's nothing about the customer in there at all. What we're doing at Catalyst is we're re-indexing our culture to celebrate first impact. We don't celebrate until that customer gets something that they paid Catalyst for. That's when we can start to celebrate, because we do that. And I've done a bunch of work with a buddy of mine, and he ran sales at Fastly when he took them public. He now's running sales at Domo. His name's Chris Kennedy, super smart guy. He's done a ton of data analysis over the years, and he's figured out that if you can shrink the time to second deal, everything else comes from that. And celebrating that first impact is your first chance to ask for an expansion. Like everybody's like, oh, it's too early. It's from the first 30 days. I got so much momentum from a great sales process, from a great handoff, from a great implementation experience to immediate time to value. I just had our first G2 review for an 11-day implementation, and we celebrate that implementation impact. And then we start asking for expansion dollars and asking for more ways that we can help out. And that to me is kind of like how you take this conceptually in a real world example of how, like, when you understand these different areas that you can optimize, if you have a model to fit it into, you can create processes that your people automatically do these things well versus struggling because they don't really have an idea of, why do I need to pass it to the onboarder that doesn't benefit me at all? And so we've really clearly outlined what the benefit is to the AE of introducing the implementation manager quickly.
Mark, like what I'm going to complement this with, and I'm going to type it down and see if some of you can. So far, let me ask the audience. Type in the chat box, what is your key takeaway so far? Help us out there. Look at what is your big, an aha moment, a key takeaway, a key question, or something like that come up. Please type it in the chat box, meeting chat. Type in, what is your key takeaway? That awkward moment, and yes, thank you. I will need one. I like to celebrate the impact, not contract part. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you. Waiting for some others. Deal starts when first impact is. Celebrate early and celebrate often. Yes, last topic was great. I love the idea of celebrating impact. Also, love the statement, we boom a 12,000 new logo and not, yeah, there we go, right? Yeah, exactly right. And so what you'll see is, let's say we pick that impact moment now, right? What if I now, like, how do I now create that moment? Let me see, what is, I'm looking for first impact, drive impact process, impact business review, renewal, expansion, there we go. Yeah, where's 04? 04 got stolen. Okay, so what you'll see down here is a horizontal vertical axis. And what we now do is we use a way, how can we implement this first impact thing? How can we learn from best practices? And what you see down here is a depicted screenshot of like a visual process that explains to people that we can say where we're at, right? And so what you'll see, implementation takes place, integration, onboarding, passwords, whatever needs to be done. Then once that is being done, you'll see down here, keep the customer engaged with short notification and notify any delay regardless who and what caused it. If you're at fault because something happened, let the customer know, hey, we're causing a delay. Because if you start the implementation and you are not within, like, let's say in worst case scenario, in many cases, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you have huge high churn risk. Your churn is, like up to that point of first impact is huge if you don't get that. If you achieve the first impact, first moment they can use your product to do something new and contribute to the product, you need to let them know that. You need to make sure that they know that, right? Confirm to the customer that that impact is perceived, that is achieved. You need to know that. Right when you do that, you can start developing an impact plan with them. Hey, we achieved this. We got the first 10 users onboarded. We got the first impact. Over the next 12 months, like Mark showed that staircase, here's the moments that you're going to see impact. Once you get up to 20 users, 50 users, once you get up to X amount of usage, how many folders you've opened, whatever it is that your product does, at that stage, I'm going to let you know, I'm going to come back and talk to you, because that will be a moment. You call that a joint impact plan. You lay out in this process what the impact, this often happens within the first week. What does the next 11 months of engagement look like with us? And you're going to use that from past customers. You can already highlight, oh, and in October of your, let's say we're in whatever July, in October, we're going to all gather at this event where we're going to discuss best practices. That is the idea. You visualize it. Where are you at? If you're in that moment in time, you know, the customer has signed, but you haven't achieved that impact yet. You're here. You're in that valley down there. And if you don't deliver that impact, if you don't keep them engaged, if you're not letting them know why there's a delay, could be your side, could be their side, to achieve that first impact, you're exposed to churn these days. Okay. That was my contribution. Mark, save me from myself.
Yeah, listen, I just think as humans, we have a very difficult time correctly attributing value to things. And I think that we see this in a ton in our personal lives, but I think it translates very directly to the professional stuff that we do. And, it's crazy to me that, at Outreach, we could increase to somebody pipe gen 400% in the first 3 months. And maybe we had moderate increases after that. And then they would come back and say we hadn't done anything for them. And you do have to put it in front of their face. And I would tell you, if you're trying to use QBRs to do that, I don't think that it's effective. I did a little poll when I was talking to a bunch of CS leaders, and the amount of QBRs where executives don't show up is more than half, and the amount of QBRs that get pushed is more than a third. And if your right people aren't showing up and the meeting is constantly getting pushed, then it's an invaluable meeting. And no matter how much it means to you personally, it means nothing to your customer. I'll never forget the first QBR I went to with a software company we all know, probably most of us use. And all I felt with it was a please don't churn in 9 months meeting. And that has no value to me. And so I think that we have to get that impact. Once you organize around that, you actually have something to talk about. You have a meeting that people are interested in. If you've done a good job in the sales cycle of aligning impact to the business initiatives, they need to know that what your impact was. And they're interested in knowing that. And then once you've done it once, you earn the right to ask to do it again. Once you've done it multiple times, you start to be a person that they come to ask for suggestions on how to solve stuff. And that's when the relationship between being a vendor and a trusted partner changes. And that's a great way to start thinking about what do I organize around? Because I'm telling you, 98% of CS organizations organize around retention. That is not what you should organize around. Retention is a means to an end. What you want to organize around is growth. The way that you grow is you get recurring revenue. The way you get recurring revenue, as we've seen, is recurring impact. You need to organize around impact and define what that is and how you deliver it so that your teams have a really clear path to achieving that for their customers.
Mark, I'm speaking on behalf of Winning by Design here. I called you up, it feels like a few days ago, but it was probably before the weekend. And I shared with Mark something that I personally experienced here at Winning by Design. We are an impact-centric company. What I noticed that what we were doing, we started to mistake the customer having a great experience with the customer having a great impact. And so when we get messages from a customer being happy with a trainer training on something, let's say a trainer trains on the first impact program, right? And we then get message back, oh my gosh, Aaliyah was a fantastic trainer. She is a fantastic trainer, right? But she was fantastic. We loved her. We felt that, subconsciously, we didn't speak about it, but it felt like we had accomplished the goal. But Aaliyah being a great person and being a great trainer only masquerades potentially that we haven't delivered the impact. And so what I found that we as human beings have done, even ourselves at Winning by Design, where we profess some of these things, that we ourselves went wrong, that we started to mistake customers letting us know how great we were and how fantastic the experience were is actually not the same as the customers achieving the impact. Look at him in thought over there. I mean, he's typing clearly. He's answering a question on chat.
I'm answering a question, yes. I was just saying, somebody asked about the QBR. And, I was just typing, it's a randomly timed, who decided every 90 days is when we need to talk about something. That's just because it was simple to decide that once a quarter. And then we got enough bandwidth to do that, right? And in worst case, it's super low value. It's a bunch of usage metrics. I don't care if my people are using it or not. What I care is delivering the impact. The QBR did is hey, we found out that your reps listen to this many call recordings. So Like I looked on there and the ones that were listening to it the most were my lowest performers, probably because they were listening to call recordings all the time instead of like actually getting busy selling stuff. Right. And it was very focused on them. They were just wanted to talk to me about how awesome they were and all these awards and this and that. I don't care about the awards either. Right. What I care about is like, are you actually doing something for me? And so instead, if you have an impact, guess what, Jocko? We just got together. You asked us about improving your churn rate by 5 points. We just had our first quarter that looks like it was about 5 points above your historical average per quarter. Like these are 2-3 things that we did to help you achieve that. We think there's 2 or 3 other things that we could be doing too. If you let us talk to you about that, that maybe could get you an extra point or two to blow this goal out of the water. Like, can we show you what those are? Boom. Like that's a conversation that every executive on earth wants to have. And
Mark,
so that's where we need to be.
There's a few different kinds of, in using the trigger word impact down here. There's a few ones that come. Ones that come because, like you went for them, like NRR metrics, right? You shot for 1.1, 10% NRR, 110% NRR. You shot for that. Ones that are scheduled to come, like, hey, every year there's a 1st of January, the world changes. There's one that's reactionary. Okay, we see that a person at the company, the champion left. And there's one that has to deal with price increases. You know that the price increase is coming. Is everybody trained on the team to discuss that and why that is, right? And I'll take a brief note on that because many of you are experiencing this. I want you to understand that SaaS and pricing, in the end, was not inclusive of upgrade and support. It was not. If you understand what the history of SaaS pricing comes from, it comes from something like this. I sold a piece of software for $1 million. And every customer I had to sell this to had their own piece of software. Literally, they got their own drives with their own sticker on it, right? Their own discs with their sticker on it. And we shipped that. And so if I had 5 customers, I had 5 software packages going, each mailed, envelope, shipped out, right? And so often each of these software programs was custom built. It was custom printed. It came out of a machine who inserted that custom disk and made that custom, very custom. Okay, sometimes with custom features on it. So now when I had 5 customers, that was not a problem. But when I had 30 customers and 40 customers and I upgraded software, this became a major headache. And so I started to charge upgrade and support charges, 20%. And so every year that the customer wanted to get the upgrade and support services, they had to pay 20%, and you had to commit to that up front. So you bought $1 million package with 20% upgrade and support. And so over 3 years, a little bit more, but you got 1.6 times the revenue, right? Then with cloud, we said, let's remove the $1 million because everybody's on the cloud and everybody's using the same software. So now customers only pay 20%, hence the recurring revenue service. We removed the upfront cost. Customers got a huge benefit from this. They no longer have to pay the $1 million upfront. Now, when I send you a disk and when I send you features with that disk and you pay 20%, that means that over a period of 3 years, you were going to get 1 upgrade, more or less. 1 upgrade. You still experience this with Apple and Microsoft only do major upgrades once every 2 years. That still resists. SaaS, on the other hand, because you signed into the SaaS service, you got all these new features every month, every week, and you kept increasing. So the product that you bought, if you are a good SaaS company, a year later, that product should be more feature rich. It should be able to do more things. That is the reason why you can raise prices to a customer. That hasn't, of course, the world, like financial indices go up as well. That is also valid. But the customer you have a valid point to tell the customer if you've done your job correct. Why? Because you listen to your customers, you improve your product. Bug fixes, that's not fair, right? That should be fixed. But the new features they're getting, this means that you have to talk upfront to your customers about where the price increase comes from. If you do not train your customer success team on that, or you have to kick that back to sales to do that, sales is not going to do that correctly, and customer success ain't not going to do that correctly without training. You got to let people know how to do that. That's 5, 6, 7, 8% increase a year. That is hella important to the company to do, in particular in these cases. Would you lower the cost right now? No. We often recommend that during a downturn like this, customers actually increase the price. Maybe not by 10%, don't get me wrong, but you got to increase the price because you're going to sift through which customers are willing to pay as long as you train your team to handle that conversation. Mark.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think the understanding that perpetual license connection to what we're currently doing really helps you understand like how to think about pricing right now. And, on my team, I think, we understand that the buyers have the leverage and we have to really make sure that we're delivering a ton of value in the sales process and post sales for expansion opportunities. And if your team, it's funny, Jocko, I talked to a lot of people and there's a huge gap between commercial skill enablement for post-sales and pre-sales people. Like pre-sales people have been through 83 trainings on how to do a discovery call. Post-sales people haven't usually been through one serious training session with an actual person that comes in and is a master of what they do and shows them how to do it. They handle it all internally because they don't have the budget or they don't understand who the experts are, or some of the processes are so different than what they do because there's so many different practices that are happening out there, because best practice in post sales has really been limited and hasn't been available to a lot of people. And so I think that, if you're going to have those commercial conversations post sales, you have to train them like your commercial pre-sales people, because they're the same kind of conversations. And that's a difficult thing because that's a big skill set, plus the successing and adoption skill set is a big skill set too. So there's a lot to do there that you have to break down.
Okay, as we start to wrap up, a few things I want to point out. We knew that this situation was going to occur. We knew that we already knew a few years ago that this growth at any and all costs could not sustain itself. We knew that, right? It was just a matter of how. And to be honest, we knew this around 2018, 19. COVID actually inflated us back into NEN growth and all costs. We knew it was going to come. So as the bubble burst, or the SaaS market crashed, we also knew that the layoffs, we grew over the past decade, the golden age, from 1,000 companies to 35,000 companies. Many SaaS providers grew by selling more to other SaaS providers. So as the market grew from 1,000 to 35,000, we created a system that we sold to ourselves. This entire system inflated itself, right? And so today we see that the market is shrinking. We see many companies, still letting go of people. It has faded away. But if you go to layoffs.fyi, you'll see that over the past 3 quarters, we had far more layoffs than sometimes in a single month, more than during the entire time of COVID. These layoffs are going to shrink the market. That means I have less Zoom licenses to sell. I have less Catalyst licenses to sell if the company on the other side has fewer people to sell them to, right? Natural thing is going to happen. As a result, naturally, NRR is going down. David Spitz just reported this on LinkedIn, and I'll type it quickly in, Dave Spitz. David Spitz reported just on LinkedIn this particular metric, and this particular metric is that NRR is coming down about 5 percentage points, which, as I pointed to you earlier, because of its exponential impact, has a huge impact, okay? So it's already happening. So what's going to happen next? What do we all think is going to happen next? Take a breather for a second, okay? NRR is coming down. I'm not acquiring as many companies. What's happening? Mark, do you have what is going to happen next? What do you think in this world? If you're a venture-driven company, if you're a startup, $30 million in revenue, $5 million in revenue, $150 million in revenue, what is about to happen next?
Well, I think that the thing everybody's wondering about is what impact does AI have on what I'm doing? And so I think there's a massive run to figuring out how to handle that, what to do with it. I think there was a little novelty writing emails. Like, listen, I don't think writing emails is a real value add, to be honest with you. Summarizing calls, maybe, I don't know. But to me, that's what I'm thinking about. That's what I'm hearing most people talking about. I don't know if that's what you were after, Jocko, but that's the thing.
Oh no, I'm not after anything. I think that there's a number of things going to happen. Number one thing, I do believe AI is going to come in and maybe a lower cost. Why? Because people want to cut costs on CS. What you're going to find, logically, people are going to cut on CS. Why? Because they're not in the world, they're not contributing to revenue growth. My first thought that you as an executive have to do, if you're listening to this, you have to explain through that chart that I put early on, you have to explain where growth comes from. You have to explain retention. You have to position it as a form of growth. Retention is a form of growth. Why? You have to renew. It won't come automatically. And so you have to pursue it as if it's something. Second thing that's going to happen, CS is going to be replaced either by AI or by sales. Somebody in the sales organization says, hey, I can do what they do, and they're going to do that. The problem when that happens, I'll give you a heads up. The problem when that happens, and I need you to be armed with this insight so you can have this conversation. If sales is being put on customer expansion, it means that the compensation plan of the salesperson is being applied to the expansion sales. It means that the cost of sales, the acquisition cost, is held against the expansion cost. Normally, the cost of an existing customer managing is a fraction of that of acquisition cost. If I make the cost the same thing, it means that not only is my growth slowing down, but my cost is exponentially going up since my salespeople are now being compensated for the dollars that should have gone to the customer success team. It is really ill-advised to do that because the company is now having an oil spill problem that is spilling out into the existing customer world. I'm not even talking if they have the right skill set and whether they should be talking about it. I'm purely talking mathematically from the fundamentals. I'm suddenly seeing my cost rise to go to expansion. And that is primarily because that the headcount cost is hitting their books right now, and the expansion cost that is going up with salary will hit them at the end of the year. You need to explain this to your management team that this is not the right way to do it. We have videos for that on YouTube, people. So if we can help, just click on one of these videos, use them to amplify this point. Yeah, a different mindset. Thank you, David Allen. The point here really is there's a very different mindset when you sell of selling and to a close a deal. And the reason why that acquisition cost is so much higher in general is because you're dealing with, like you have to call on 5 times as many customers to win one. Whereas an expansion, that metric should be a lot more beneficial. So after that, after this occurs, okay, I want you to see what's going on, the next steps. I would love for any CS reps, if you're in CS, if you're managing a CS team, if you're head of customer success, you need to learn mathematically where growth comes from. You need to know unit economics, how things contribute, and you need to get closer to your CFO and CFO team. Do that. That is your best road over the next 6 to 12 months. Get close to the CFO, understand what the costs are, understand where profit comes from, understand what a profitable customer looks like, work with the CFO to identify who are the most profitable customers. Think about it that way. That is the best immunity that you can have. We are not through the storm yet, people. We're not through the storm yet. We are going into 2 more quarters of this before 2024. And we do think that 2024 will look a lot better, but we still think that we want to make sure that you're prepared for this. The reason, Mark, that you and I immediately partnered on this once you landed the sweet gig at Catalyst was because we think about both the same thing. Customer success is a revenue center, is a profit center. Customer success is where growth and profit comes from, where it originates. Catalyst builds a product to facilitate that. Winning by Design builds the methodology, right? But that Catalyst has that mindset. The mindset is customer success is a profit center and a growth center. With that said, Mark, any passing words, any closing words?
No, appreciate the time, Jocko. As always, fun spitballing with you, talking through stuff. I think that you can tell Jocko and I are both really passionate about this topic. I think it is the topic for software and SaaS sales companies right now. And companies that don't figure it out are never going to catch back up to the companies that did figure it out. And I think that there's a big weight on the back of post-sales leaders, CCOs, SVPs, and VPs of CS to really come armed with strong talking points, strong theory, and good data to help these old school revenue leaders start to understand that if they don't invest in their customers and the impact that their customers have, the model is going to eventually spit them out right now in the current economic conditions. That the SaaS model does not reward acquisition heavy customers forever.
Only up to about 5-6 million. After that is all expansion and growth and retention. Fantastic. Mark, much appreciate you being here. To everybody attending, thank you for joining this session. The recording will be shortly available. We recommend that you share it with people inside the company so that, like education. If their eyes are not open yet, educate them. With that said, thank you all. Fantastic. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Thanks, Heiner. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, David. Thanks, Chase. Thanks, Stefan. Thanks, next screen. Oh, there's too many. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, and so on. Everybody, just thank you all. Bye-bye.